Yo, it's the Third Party Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3 with Gabriel Blackwell. Bismillah.
What's up, y'all? It's Gabriel Blackwell of Blackwell Training Group. I'm here with the Third Party Podcast.
Yo, it's Muslim Casey, a.k.a. the Muslim Boxer, a.k.a. Mr. NyQuil, a.k.a. Mr. 12 and no 9 KOs, a.k.a. rank number 4. I got back to number 4. It's crazy. Yes, sir. With that last knockout. But thank God, alhamdulillah. But we're here with the Third Party Podcast with my special co-host, Rod DeVoe.
Rod DeVoe, Third Party Podcast. Hey, man, we got a great guest today. We got Gabriel Blackwell from Blackwell Training Group. What's up, man?
What's going on?
What's happening? Assalamu alaikum.
Glad to have you on the show, man. This is going to get interesting because, you know, the whole Second Amendment, guns, and stuff like that.
And everything that's going on in Philly right now.
Everything that's going on in Philly, in the city. Gabriel Blackwell from Blackwell Training Group. He's a husband, father, entrepreneur, firearm instructor, stop the bleed instructor, active shooter instructor. He also trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. My favorite thing about him, though, is he's a Jawala Scout leader as well.
Yeah. Koala Scouts.
Yeah, cut it out, man.
Koala is crazy.
Cut it out. It's so disrespectful.
Yo, listen. It's cool. I'm gonna make sure none of the scouts see this joke.
So we're going to dive into it, man. What is a firearm instructor?
What is a firearms instructor? All right, a firearms instructor is somebody who just teaches a person how to utilize a firearm, gun safety, hopefully take it to the next step of, you know, in the event of you having to actually use that firearm in self-defense, teaching you who to shoot, who not to shoot, how to deal with the cops afterwards. You know, that's like another level to it right now. But that will be the basics, just teaching a person how to be safe with a firearm, how to shoot it correctly.
How do you get into becoming a firearms instructor?
So COVID kind of gave a cheat code for a lot of people, but I can tell you how I did it. Alhamdulillah, I actually met my mentor. He was a brother he worked for the government some years ago. He did just a lot of work, executive protection. He was a firearms instructor himself. I actually met him in Delaware. We were doing security together. He taught me how to do security. He brought me into the security world. He saw my skills in teaching, and he told me from way before I actually became an instructor, he told me, he's like, I'm going to prepare you to become an instructor. I didn't really think much of it at the time, but over the years, he kind of just prepped me. He brought me along, and then eventually he put me in a teaching position, and I was able to kind of gain that experience.
How far did you go along with the with doing security? I did security for a while.
We started out at the Masjid just doing Masjid security. We actually had a security team down at that Masjid. I wasn't a member of that Masjid, but again, because he was my mentor, that's where he did it, so he would always ask me to come by and help. We did that for a while. I ended up working a little executive protection, like actually doing like details with, I guess you would consider them high profile individuals and things like that. I've done a lot of different things, events, I've done party stuff, I've done, one-on-one details, just, here and there.
So then you make a jump into like being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you started the Blackwell Training Group.
Yes.
Like, what does that entail? What do you guys do?
What do we do? I always say, when people ask me, what do? I say, I teach people how to protect themselves. Realistically, it's more from a point of teaching the firearm side of things,
right.
Teaching people how to shoot, teaching them gun safety. We do kids classes. We teach families, okay, mom or dad got a gun in the house, we do a lot of that family work. We also do concealed carry. We help people get their concealed carry permits, train them to prepare for that. And just a lot of basic stuff when it comes to firearms, just rifle, shotgun, handgun, all of that. The other side, the medical side of things, we're also stop the bleed instructors. I have a couple stop the bleed instructors on the team. So that is basically teaching people how to identify life-threatening bleeding and then what to do to stop it, the tools to use to stop it, things along that line. So I tell people all the time, if I show you how to make holes, I'll also show you how to patch them up too.
I'll show you how to make holes.
I'll show you how to put holes in them.
Put holes in them, right, and then it patch up yours. So and your team. So that is the I guess the overall gist of what we do.
It's so crazy because at one time in Philly, everybody was getting like licenses to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was hype about the reciprocity from the different states.
Absolutely. We don't get that much reciprocity here though. Not like Vegas.
I mean, some places get it all.
Nevada?
But yeah.
I had mine in Nevada. You get your Nevada, I think you get like 42 states.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain like what's reciprocity?
To break it down, the concealed carry license is just a license to carry a concealed firearm. It's not a license to carry a firearm. It's just can carry it in a concealed manner.
What is a concealed firearm?
So that is basically if you're carrying a gun and we'll use the term inside the waistband. So anytime that a gun is inside the waistband where you could pull a shirt or a jacket over it, that's considered concealed. If you carry a gun in your car and it's not like locked up in your trunk, it's like in the passenger compartment with you, that's considered a concealed firearm as well. Anytime where somebody just can't look at you and see that you have a gun on you. It's what's considered open carry. Open carry is like basically what cops do. When you can just look at their hip, their gun is on the outside of their waistband, and you can clearly see just, you know, them walking by, you can see that they have a gun. That's the main difference, is just open carry and concealed carry. The license to concealed carry just means that you can have a gun and keep it concealed. Usually the only people they keep from doing that is a violent felony. You got a violent felony on your record, usually, at least in Pennsylvania, they'll bar you from it. Outside of that, you have a clean record, they'll let you carry concealed. The reciprocity is what other states will take your home state concealed carry license and recognize it and allow you to carry the same way concealed in their state. So a lot of times it has to do with the training. It just has to do with kind of like relationships between the states. Basically what that means is like, okay, let's say perfect example. Georgia has reciprocity with Pennsylvania. So if I can get my Pennsylvania concealed carry license, Georgia says, okay, well, we honor Pennsylvania's license to conceal carry. So if you get one in Pennsylvania and you're able to get one there legally, then you can also come down to Georgia, in the state of Georgia, and carry concealed just as if you were in Pennsylvania, as an example. It's important to know which state shares reciprocity with yours. That way, you know, you're not, I don't want to say not getting into trouble, but you just avoid that attention type of deal. Because sometimes it gets funky too, because like when it comes to Pennsylvania, like Delaware, New York, Jersey, which we all border, Maryland, we don't have reciprocity with.
Right.
So I live in Chester. I'm 10 minutes away from the Delaware border. I can carry all in PA, no problem. The moment I cross the Delaware state line, it's as if I'm a criminal because I don't have a Delaware license to carry.
Like you being black, you being Muslim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of these Second Amendment, gun right, like it's not a space where a lot of black Muslims are.
Mm-mm.
Like how do you like feel in those spaces?
I was 14 years old playing around in my dad's closet. I came across a gun cleaning kit. And in my head, I was like, living in Chester, growing up in the hood, it's like, all right, 3 types of people got guns. You drug dealer, you cop, or you a military dude. That's it. And I knew my dad wasn't in the military. My dad was not a cop. And I'm like, damn, my dad must be a drug dealer then, right? So I asked him about it. He was like, nah, like I ain't know nothing about the Second Amendment back then. So he was just like, no, I keep a gun to protect us. And he explained it to me. He showed it to me. He took me to the range, and I was kind of like shocked. I was like, it's no way, like you just have a gun. And then what was shocking was when he took me to the range, my dad's friends went with us and they had guns too. And I'm like, oh, all of y'all is like crazy. Like, what's up? Like,
all strapped.
That was the mindset, was just like cops, military, or a criminal type of deal. But now getting older and coming into that space, I'm recognizing like one thing I always say is it's funny. I feel just naturally, I feel at home in that space for me, like in that realm of, you know, protection and things like that, having that freedom to do so. And then a lot of the guys that I find in that space, like, yeah, you don't find a lot of black Muslims there, but most of the people you find there, we connect because a lot of the times we're there based off of the same reason. We have a shared purpose of being here. I want to be able to protect mine. You want to be able to protect yours. So it's like with that alone can build camaraderie, especially when in the times that we're in now. And it's not like it's anything new, but it's not something that's looked highly upon in our culture, even though like we have a culture of guns in America. Like it's more guns than people in the country, right? Like we understand that. But as far as like the actual social aspect of it, it's become something that's kind of like a negative thing. So when you kind of have that negative stigmatism on something that you do and you're there with another person who we might not have anything else in common, that alone is enough to kind of give us a little bit of camaraderie where it's like, I can respect you and you can respect me because of the fact that we're both trying to do at least what we think is best for our people.
Explain how different that relationship is to, let's say, some of the rural
Yeah.
like rural white people.
Yeah. I feel like most of us, like being black and in the hood, we don't have a positive relationship with guns, really. Usually it's looked at like, I don't want to say necessarily as like a negative thing, but we kind of look at it like in a negative sense.
Right.
Like, again, most of the times that we first introduced to guns is, I mean, if you look at movies and TV and music, it's never anything that's really positive.
Right.
It's like, I got to use this to protect my block, or I got to use this to make sure my product is cool, or I got to use this to kill people. Like, that's kind of what the initial introductory state of that is for us,
Right.
in the inner city. Most of us, I should say. For them, it's more like a part of culture, heritage, and life.
Right.
And I'm starting to see, as I'm spending more and more time in it, and my views are starting to change and things in it, I'm starting to see that, number one, I think there are more like black Muslims that are coming into that and understanding that it is a cultural aspect of being American.
Right.
And I look at that as a positive thing. And I think it's a good change that I feel like needs to happen. Because, again, too, just where we are, where we grew up, and then even the news that we hear about it, like, it's nothing positive, usually.
I always try to figure out why people are not okay with toting guns. And I always think about, I mean, this is my personal opinion, I always think about like the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was strapped.
Yeah, hands down.
Every day of his life. Like, his modern day weapon
Would have been a gun.
would have been a gun.
Yeah, hands down.
And I never understand how people want to be so like the Prophet. That's our like right to protect your family, right to protect your household, making
Your community,
sure you
yeah.
protect you, not even just your household, but the rights that your neighbors have over you. So your neighbor has rights over you, but you can't do nothing about it if you ain't got nothing to hold them back.
Because for me, I recognize it through trying to run a business. And I'm black and Muslim, so it's like, for me, community is important. I love my community. So for me, I'm like, yeah, I want to push this to them.
Right.
And nobody wants it.
Why do you think that?
I've thought about it for some time, and my opinion on it is it comes from not necessarily having our own identity yet. As black Muslims, I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we lack is a real a connection to us at like a cultural black American. Like, to be black and American, like to actually have that identity, we have a very, I don't know how to say it, like a weak culture. We have like a weak foundation, a weak identity around it. So because we have a weak identity around it, we don't really see the need to be able to protect it. So like, for perfect example, I look at like who's black and Muslim but doesn't have that idea about themselves. I think the first people I think about is who? Nation. They don't have no problem protecting themselves, and they'll tell you from the beginning. Like, you look at
things.
But even just besides that, they have that idea of do for self and self-protect.
Shout
and
out to the nation.
Listen, for that, for sure. That's what I see. And I'm like, okay, but they have a bigger self-identity than the general black Muslim does. And especially because we have a very odd relationship with Islam that I don't really think has connected fully for us yet. That's why it's a different, like when I said earlier, like it's a part of life for rural white people in some spaces, not even just white people, but just people in more and more rural spaces, because they have that connection to heritage and culture and the sense of self. They're like, heck yeah, like, of course, that is a very American thing, and they're okay with it.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's just the type of life you live in a city versus
it's that too.
What's like a urban versus rural existence. When I visit my family down south, there's a gun club on the land.
But but they have a stronger connection to themselves.
So I understand that aspect. I just feel like, I mean, because it's, it's not like black Muslims are the only people railing against guns. Like,
no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's more along the lines of kind of like city versus country. You know what I mean? And not that there aren't city people. A whole bunch of people got licensed to carry all the time in Philly all the time. I took my son to shoot, and he 15 or whatever. I take him, give him my man do the whole safety thing, and just it's a white family next to me, and it's a 7-year-old, it's an 11-year-old, and it's a 13-year-old, and they all girls. but this is all the way in like Chester County down. You know, what I mean, this is not near here. They live kind of like a different life. You know, I understand some of what you're saying. I just think a lot of it is urban versus rural for the majority of it.
And I think that it definitely does play a part in that for sure.
Right.
It's one thing that I'm starting to see, because I've been in this world since around 2013-ish. So just over 10 years, 11 years. I'm starting to see the shift a little bit in the urban centers where, like you said, there are more people now than 5 years ago that have concealed carry licenses and carry pretty like frequently. That's something that we're kind of becoming privy to and feeling like we not have to do more now, but we're learning more about it now. And I think as we begin to adopt a sense of that, we will be able to connect a little bit stronger to ourselves and have it where it's not so much as a shameful thing. I teach this to the scouts, obviously. And you know, every so often we get a new round of scouts where they haven't ever heard of anything about gun safety or anything along that line. So we have a program. We just run it through every so often, every couple times a year or whatnot. And one of the other scout leaders, he's an older scout leader. He's in his 50s. And it's funny because he listens to me teach. He listens to me instruct. And he's an instructor as well. But he always laughs, and he always tells me at the same time, he's like, man, he's like, y'all young people come at it from a different angle, because for him, growing up in the inner city, like guns meant a different thing for him. When I talk more about protection, and I talk more about, concealed carry, and I talk more about like just bringing it as a part of American culture, he comes at it from a different angle of being like, man, we grabbed those things when we had to go to work, or we got to, like that angle. And even now, he's not like promoting that to the kids at all. He's like, no, this is great. But he always laughs about it because he's like, his lived experience and his people in his generation time, it was a different thing.
But my thing is, if you grabbing it to go to work, you got to be able to know how to use it to go to work.
It was enough for them. Just like it is, like perfect example, even now. You see if you watch the videos of stuff that's going around Philly, even the thing that happened at the E, right? Most of these things are people that don't know what they're doing, or else it would be a completely different output, completely different outcome.
But that is the reason why I think if people start taking away firearms are bad, then kids won't be so enticed to say, let me play with them. Because if they know it's not a toy from the get-go, and they know it's not cool to just tote around a gun or something like that, know it's not cool to just try to shoot somebody, this ain't a video game.
Bro, that's my entire approach when it comes to teaching. Like, I tell parents all the time, like, yo, if you are a gun owner, your kid needs to know you got a gun in the house, and you need to sit down and talk to your kid about that.
My daughter's 3.
Yeah, I had a class today, 5 boys today, all between the ages of 9 and I think the oldest was 15. And one of the things I do for my children's classes, I have BB guns that are mocks of, like, they're carbon copies of real guns.
Yes, sir.
I have several of them, different brands, different types. And what I do is we'll go through the class, and at the end of the class, I always play a game with them. I'm going to put 10 guns on the table. You tell me which ones are real and which ones are fake. And almost every single time, they can't tell the difference between the real ones and the fake ones. They can't. And the point that I make, and usually this is the part where I have the parents come. Usually the parents will sit in the back, they'll be on their phones, whatever, but I have them come up too, and I have them guess too. And I say, this is the reason why your child needs to know this, because they looked at that real gun and thought that was a BB gun, or they looked at that BB gun and thought it was real. And regardless of which side you fall on it, it's like, that is something that you need to have your child know. Number one, we got to kill the curiosity when it comes to guns. And that's what I always say to parents. If you happen to have a day you just absent-minded, maybe you leave your gun out somewhere and your kid come across it, you want your child's reaction to be, oh, it's mom's gun. Mom, you left your gun out. You need to come, rather than, oh, a gun. And all they know is from Fortnite or Call of Duty or John Wick or whatever. They going to pick that thing up and play with it. That's my approach when it comes to like dealing with like the gun violence and stuff like that in the city. Chester obviously is a little bit different than Philly, but it's the same. It's not that different.
It's very similar.
If you approach this thing from an educational standpoint, most of the times where you have these incidences of kids shooting themselves or shooting a sibling or shooting their parents even, it comes from a place of ignorance. The kid doesn't know what it is. They play with it like it's a toy, and that leads to negligence. When you turn around and you combat that with the education of, I know this is not a toy. I know this is only used for hunting, or only used when we go to the range for sports shooting, or only used for self-defense. I'm not going to touch it outside of that. It becomes a different dynamic. It has a different relationship that you have. It's called killing the curiosity.
So you say you're not a member of the NRA, right?
No.
But you are a member of
USCCA.
USCCA.
Yes.
What's USCCA?
United States Concealed Carry Association.
So they're kind of like a newer organization.
Similar to the NRA.
Similar to the NRA.
Things are just a little bit different. The USCCA, one thing that they have that really makes them kind of stand apart from the NRA, they offer self-defense insurance.
Okay.
So what that is basically they have like a network of like Second Amendment lawyers that are well-versed in Second Amendment and self-defense laws all over the country. And you pay like, it's like car insurance. You pay them every month. It's like $25, $30,
Like
something
prepaid
like that.
legal.
It's basically like prepaid legal.
Yeah.
So in the event that you actually find yourself in a self-defense situation, dealing with firearms or outside of firearms even, they have a lawyer for you. They pay your bail to get out of jail that night. They pay for days you got to be in court. They pay your fees. They do all of that.
The CCW, even though you have reciprocity in these different states, they do have different laws as far as the self-defense laws.
Yeah, some laws are nationwide. Some laws vary from state to state.
Okay.
So like the more broader ones are ones that are nationwide, like, okay, the right to bear arms. That's nationwide. Then every single state kind of determines how we're going to express that.
Yeah. New Jersey's the worst.
Yeah, New Jersey, New York, California are the absolute worst.
They're the worst.
So, and it's funny because like in New York and New Jersey, for example, up until like a year ago, pretty much you couldn't get a concealed carry license unless you were like a celebrity or like a jewelry store owner. Like you had to prove like I have a dangerous living situation. Outside of that, it was like a horrible process in trying to get your concealed carry. So just recently, they actually changed it to the way that the states were set up, where that they shall issue. So if you requested a concealed carry permit, they shall issue it to you if they choose so or not. Now they changed it, so now pretty much anybody can get one, but now they had to set up a process to do that. It's still a longer process. You have to do more training. You have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. And like I said, different states have different ways of doing it. Delaware, for example, you have to put your name in the paper that you're going to get a concealed carry permit. And they have to put it in like the local paper wherever you are and let the people know. They have to let the community know that this person is going for a concealed carry permit. So red flag laws, certain states have them, and they're trying to make it a nationwide thing where a good example of a red flag law interaction is you could go with your kid to the range and you post a picture of it on social media. I'm at the range, I'm showing my daughter firearm safety. One of your coworkers could see it. Maybe they have a negative thought about firearms, or maybe they just don't like you or anything along that line. They could report to their local police department, hey, such and such is being very public about their firearm usage and how they're doing it. And I think they're also being very dangerous because they're being reckless with it with their children. From there, the police can choose to open up an investigation on you based off of that report. And they can say, all right, they can give it over to the DA or whoever, and they can from there determine, okay, is Mohsen a danger or not to society? Is he a danger or not to his family with those firearms? And then they can choose to either take them from you and ban you from buying them or possessing them again after that, or maybe they could just determine that you're not a danger.
But it'd be unfounded if they don't come up with anything.
It depends. It depends on the DA. It depends on your area. It depends on where you live, because you could live in an area that's very pro-gun. And that type of stuff won't happen. Or you could live in an area that's very anti-gun, and that stuff is more lenient to happen. The basis of a red flag law is for anybody to be able to report possible reckless activity or unsafe activity with firearms. And then an investigation is opened up based off of your municipality, the DA, whatever the case may be, depending on where you are, into if that is the case or not. So it's not the same thing as just like calling the cops and reporting it, but it's the actual system that's just built for that.
So all right, so let me ask you this: in these spaces that you're in, there's misconceptions about like Black Muslims. Like do you run into that? I assume that you get like close with people, right? Like some of the instructors, you're doing these classes. Most of those people probably don't look like you.
Yeah, no.
So what kind of misconceptions do you come up against?
Again, personally, not too many. People are just kind of surprised to see me.
Right.
People have, I mean, I've taught a lot of different types of people.
Because when you see a name on paper,
Yeah, I don't scream black Muslim.
don't scream
Yeah,
black
not at
Muslim.
all.
Right.
I mean,
Nah.
and the way it's spelled.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just looking at it, Gabriel Blackwell, that's the way it looks like
Right.
when you read it, right? So people, they kind of form their own opinion or image of me before they meet me.
Right.
Again, most of the time, like I said, I don't really run into that too much because a lot of my promotion has been through like Instagram, social media, where people can see me.
Right.
And I'm pretty open on my social media about being a black Muslim.
Right.
So they kind of have that understanding already. There are some people I do come across though that are surprised kind of to see me, and then because it's not something you see often, when they listen to me instruct or they watch me teach, they like, oh wow, like you know what you're talking about. You're a good teacher. Like it's kind of weird to them. So I wouldn't say too many misconceptions. I can tell you like, and I feel like I would reach it by now. The range that I teach at, like you see it a mile away. The driveway, it's 1 million American flags. It's 1 million Blue Lives Matter signs.
Right.
It's 1 million F Biden and thank Mr. Trump. We need Trump back. Like that's the kind of place you're walking into.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I bring students there, they get freaked out because most of them usually are black, usually are younger.
Right.
And they're looking, and I do get, my fair share of Muslim students as well, but they're looking like, yo, like this is a trap. Like what you bringing me into type deal. Right, it's a setup type of deal.
Yeah, I couldn't find a lot of data about the USCCA, but it said, the NRA is like 16% black and mostly all Republican.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're going to find in the 2A world. Like most 2A guys are going to, at the very least, be conservative, mostly lean Republican.
Right.
So like that's like the area we're in. That's the people you're going to be dealing with. That's the type of lingo you'll be hearing, the talk that's around. So a lot of times people are freaked out by that.
How do you navigate it?
I navigate it in a way that I feel like I belong here just as much as you do. And they catch that energy and I don't have no problems.
Right.
I got one foot in both worlds type of deal. I'm home in Chester and then I go out and deal with those people who are dealing in that world. And it's funny because I kind of get pulls from both sides where people on the 2A side, like the people that I deal with that don't have any
When you
idea
say
of
2A,
Second Amendment.
Second Amendment.
Yeah. In that world of
Right.
dealing with those people, sometimes they have misconceptions about my home and what it's like. And for them, they're like, how do you deal with that? And the same thing on the other side. They're like people like my family, my friends, people around my community, they're like, you do what? Like you deal with who? You probably run into all types of craziness. But I think the biggest thing that I take from it is because I sit there and I kind of have my own personal identity about who I am and how I want to live life and approach life and things like that. I approach it with like, I'm just as American as you.
Right.
I'm here. This is my right. I can do this and I'm good at it.
Right.
And on top of that, for me, it's also been a thing of like, you really want to have a problem with a dude that knows what he's doing? I got a gun on my hip.
Right.
And I got the same stuff you got. So we're on even ground now. So if you really have a problem, that's the problem you're going to be dealing with. They have that saying that an armed society is a polite society. I think part of that is that case of, if you got what I got, you have the ability to do just as much damage as I do. I'm going to be I'm not going to start a problem with you. It's kind of the same thing that most men have with each other. Most men on a general basis, we can deal with each other and we deal with each other respectfully. Why? I know you another man. You could jack me up just like I could get you. So I'm going to have a certain level of respect with you. I'm not going to be so quick to start problems unless I'm just crazy. It's something similar in that realm. Even when we come from two completely different backgrounds, we have that understanding and respect for each other. So it's like, okay, we can deal with that on that point. And I think what happens is when I bring people from like, I don't want to say my home, but when I bring people into that environment who don't normally come to that environment, that's something that they begin to recognize over time is that, oh, okay, the misconceptions aren't just like what I thought it was about. Again, like I said, you come into a place with 1 million American flags and Blue Lives Matter, you think, oh, no black Muslims are going to be allowed here. Like, they're not going to tolerate me here. But can work together and at least be respectful based off the fact that I see the Second Amendment or owning a gun and being good at it the same way you do.
I think generally most humans want the same thing.
Yes.
Generally speaking, most humans want the same
We all
thing.
want to we want to be safe. We want to be able to do what we want. We want our kids to be able to have good lives. Like, that's it.
We want pizza on Fridays.
That's right.
Like,
but that's what happens when you come into that environment. It gives you the space to be able to recognize that among other people. So that I feel like that's what happens, especially if If you come in and you're like looking for a problem, you're gonna find a problem. But if you just come in like, yo, I'm here and this is what I'm here to do, most people can respect that. And like I said, I personally haven't had any trouble with that.
You kind of touched this on this a little bit. You grew up in Chester.
Yes.
Right. Chester is
Chester.
Chester is
Chester's Chester.
Chester is 71% black. It's a small, you know, unemployment is high,
Yeah.
crime rate is high.
The hood. Yeah.
Like you grew up in Chester. What was that like?
The majority of Chester is cool. You got a few hot spots in Chester where the knuckleheads be doing their knucklehead stuff. And I feel like a lot of times, because Chester's so small though, that kind of overshadows everything.
Right.
So, I mean, I grew up on a great block,
Right.
but it was still like, okay, I can't go 2 blocks over there. They be shooting over at that store.
Right.
I can't go a block over that way because they be selling drugs real heavy over there. So it was like, just, you know, you just grow up street smart. You try to navigate best you can. Again,
Staying in your lane.
yeah, and for me, I was a knucklehead growing up. My parents knew, alhamdulillah, like I was homeschooled since 2nd grade. I went from 2nd grade and I finished high school all the way. Because my parents, they looked at me.
This explains it all with y'all too.
Okay, yeah, that's the case too. My siblings and stuff, they were able to go to school.
Right.
They didn't go to school necessarily in Chester. They went to other like private Islamic school because we was all raised Muslim. So like my parents, they was like, all right, if you want to preserve your Islam, we know they not sending me over to Chester High.
Right.
I hated it, of course, growing up, but now being older, having a family of my own, I understand it. I'm appreciative of it because I saw they was just working with what they had to try to do the best that they could.
So from 2nd grade until graduation, homeschool.
Yes.
So you was born and raised Muslim.
Yes.
So growing up in Chester, is it a point in your life that you could point to where it was like, yeah, I was born and raised Muslim, but I'm actually like choosing.
I had to accept Islam. Yeah.
I'm choosing this.
Yeah. For sure. It was one of my boys, one of my best friends. I grew up with him. He when he was 14, he's a couple of years older than me. He moved to Egypt and he went and studied over there. It was the summer that I graduated. I was interested in teaching English as a second language, and I wanted to travel. So my parents was like, man, and at the time too, I was just, you know, coming out of high school, young boy. I was like feeling myself. So my parents was like, yeah, we're gonna try this out. So you go over there. I moved to Egypt. I spent 9-10 months there.
You speak Arabic?
Yeah, I learned to speak Arabic. I mean, yeah, because I was there. I was with the Egyptians. I was in the mix.
You got the dialect down?
No, I couldn't ever get that dialect. That listen, that Amaya is crazy. It's just
Egyptian
nothing like
Amaya
Arabic. Yeah,
is-
Egyptian Amaya is insane.
Definitely different.
But it was one particular day. I know I can pinpoint that particular day
In Egypt.
in Egypt.
Okay.
I had been there already for like 4 or 5 months at the time. And that was the point. Month number 3 was like that point where it was like, I was homesick. So I lived in Miami in Alexandria. And I was like, yeah, I don't like relate to nobody here. My friend was there, but he had just gone to make Hajj at the time. So I was like really by myself. I had just pulled my rent money out the ATM. My parents was helping me out with some money at the time. I had just pulled my rent money out the ATM. It got stolen. So I ain't had no money. I couldn't eat for that day. And I was just like, yo, I'm done. I don't know what else to do. I went to the Masjid and I didn't even pray. I just went in there and made sujood and cried. And I was just like, I'm gonna try this Islam thing out. But at that point, I recognized I'm Muslim because my parents was Muslim. Like,
Right.
I know that.
Right.
So it was at that point where I was just like, yo, I'm done. And Allah, like, wallahi, from that point on, it was just something clicked. Like Allah answered, and he just, you know how you say Allah he won't change the condition of the people until they change the condition of themselves.
Right.
Wallahi, something all I can say is Allah changed my heart that day. He changed something in me.
Wow.
And it changed. Then I was like, all right, I'm taking studying seriously.
Right.
I left the teaching English thing alone for the most part. I was really just trying to study Arabic, study some Quran. Alhamdulillah, I took an interest in fiqh, started learning a little bit of fiqh because my friend was Azhari. I moved at that point. I lived with him and another Azhari student who was also American.
Right.
And I was just kind of hanging out with the Azhar boys and learning fiqh and, you know, going with students. I started living an Egyptian life. So we was, you know, sleep a little late. We out till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. We all day speaking Arabic, playing ball, studying. Like, that was it. So that became my life. And it was just that turned me into the dude that I am, like the man I am. So, like I
only that.
wholeheartedly, I thank my parents all the time. Like y'all did the right thing by sending me over there.
There's something you said. Something special about Sajud, man.
Bro, listen, because
Something
that's the
special
time
about
that you're closest to
Yeah.
Allah, like with your head on the ground. Like
Yeah.
that's all I could do. I just went in. I didn't even pray. Like normally I would go in and make two rak'ahs sunnah. I just went and just bowed my head and cried. And that's it. Just like when I got up, I was a different person. Like I know for sure it was that day. I went down and I came up somebody else. I really became Muslim on that day. I sought after my Islam that day.
Alhamdulillah.
So you come back. How was that transition?
Transition was crazy. Transition was insane. My mindset at that time became I'm trying to get more serious about Islam. So I want to go back and study.
Okay.
So my intention was, this again, like I said, it sounds crazy. My intention was I came home in June. I was going to come home in June, find a wife, get married, and be back in Egypt by September.
Right.
Yeah, out of there. That was the plan.
That was the plan. I was going to bring my little brother with me too, because I was like, I experienced this. You got to get this too. My little brother's 2 years younger than me. When I came home that June, it was 2013, and that's when the president of Egypt at the time, Mohammed Morsi, he was trying to bring Islam. His entire agenda was trying to bring Islam back to Egypt. They ousted him that summer that I was back home. So there was a lot of turmoil and things going on, and my parents was kind of like, not about to send you back into that. So I kind of got
This is right
stuck.
before the uprising in Egypt?
Yes, this was before, not the initial Arab Spring, but this was like the one specifically that happened in Egypt when the military took over.
Okay.
And Abul Sisi, he became president. That had started the summer that I came back home.
Okay.
Like literally, I came home and like a couple weeks later, that joint popped off. And it was, for me, my parents was just like, nah, you chilling here. And I was kind of like, all right, I mean, I was raised Salafi.
Right.
I was raised in a Salafi environment, a Salafi Masjid, but I didn't even know what the word Salafi meant until I went to Egypt.
Do you feel like it had a different meaning in Egypt than it does
Oh,
here?
hands down. Education is real. So if you're only exposed to what you're exposed to, you don't know what it means around the rest of the world.
Right.
Unfortunately, like most especially in the Salafi community here in the West, they don't really know what Salafi really is because you haven't seen what it's like around the rest of the world. We've seen what it's like in Mecca, Medina, and here.
Right.
And what we make of it here.
Right.
It's not the same thing in other places. When I went to a Salafi Masjid over there, you couldn't tell it was a Salafi Masjid.
Right.
Here, you know when you step inside of there, they'll look at you and be like,
You're not
bro,
supposed to be
you ain't supposed to be in this joint. Like, so for me, when I came back home, I kind of had that information now. I was able to be aware of it more. So I came home and my homecoming of that Salafi Masjid receiving me, most of the older guys who watched me grow up, they was kind of cool. The young boys that was like my age, it was like you different now. You different now. And it's like, you not really one of us anymore. And on top of that, I went to Egypt. That's not a Salafi destination. Right. If you go to study overseas, you got to go to Medina University. Right. It's nowhere else. If you go anywhere else, it's like you ain't going to nothing. Which is crazy because it's like Medina University was made for foreigners. Azhar University is the oldest Islamic institution on earth. If you go to Medina University and you complete their 4-year university program and get their bachelor's degree, you've completed an equivalency to an Azhar high school degree. We don't know that stuff here. We don't understand that. So it's like, if you say, oh, you went to Azhar, like, what is that? Like, what did you even really learn? You probably learned something, but you don't know that. It's like, bro, this joint it's a heavy, and I wasn't an Azhar student.
Right.
But I hung out with them.
Right.
So it was like the knowledge and the conversations that they would have. We never thought of having those conversations here. Coming back here, what it was like living in a tent. When I went to Egypt, I was able to unzip the tent and see, it's trees in this world. It's mountains over there. But when you come back into the tent and try to explain to the people that's in the tent that, these 4 walls ain't the world, they was just like, yeah, you went over there and lost your mind. You went over there and fell off, didn't you? Personally, I got hurt because now I'm kind of like, I grew up with y'all. Like, y'all know me. And then I was able to recognize, I see where the division comes from amongst us here. I see why we can't work together. I see certain things now, and it hurt me personally because I'm like, we need to work together. We need to build. We need to progress. We need to do this, do that. And it was like a thing where the separation became very distinct.
So when you say you grew up like Salafi, you mean like from your parents? Or
just the masjid that we went to.
Okay.
So it was like, again, my parents weren't like hardcore Salafis or anything like that, but it was our environment. It was where we were.
As far as like your adjustment, like how long do you feel like it took you to adjust from coming back
from Egypt?
From Egypt.
With that particular thing?
I mean, just in general, from being in that environment, desiring that, and you say you was ready to go back.
Yeah, I was ready to go back.
And you never did.
And never got back. And that was...
Most black people hate America until they outside of America.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, man, don't call me. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
I claim Philly.
Yeah.
But
not America. Right. Yeah. Not,
and soon as you get over,
not America. Yeah.
As soon as you get over Enrique, like you America, like
bro, you flashing that blue passport.
Yeah,
like you,
listen,
yeah.
that city.
I'm gonna be honest, especially as a black person.
Yeah. Oh,
because if they think you African,
it's a different treatment. You said it. We hate America until we not here. Right. And then as soon as we get somewhere else, we flash that Enrique. That's a funny thing. I mean,
because some of the rights, even the right to bear arms, like a lot of people in different places don't enjoy. You know what?
Personally, like I feel like, especially as black and even as Muslim, you want to say, we need to start really coming to grips with the fact that we American. I think it's something serious that we got to do, because we kind of holding our own selves back. We're not really reaping the benefits from being American. Mm-hmm. Some of them we are, but like we're not really going in as hard as we can, because it's like I have this conversation with my brothers all the time. We talk about like, what contribution has America made to Islam? Most of us, we really don't know where we came from in Africa. We don't know if we were indigenous already. We don't know where in the world we might have come from. Some people have that ability where they're able to know. And alhamdulillah, like that's good. And if you look at other groups or other races, when they know where they come from, they have that heritage, they have that culture, they connect back to them. Like an Irish boy, he gonna celebrate St. Patty's Day hard when he know he Irish, as compared to the boy that's just American.
I agree with what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I think African Americans are the most one of the most unique groups,
hands down.
Because we're not, for the most part, we're not indigenous and we're not immigrants.
Right.
Intention behind our existence here is always muddled, because an immigrant moves in a certain way.
Yes.
And people that are indigenous move in a certain way.
And you know what's crazy? I was actually just listening to a conversation that was talking about Black Americans who were here, whose ancestors most likely were slaves, but we've been here for generations, in comparison to Muslim immigrants that have come over either just before 9/11 or right after. And about how our approach to Islam is completely different too. Like Muslim Black America's history in America is the nation, and how hard it was like to be like, we're Muslim, we're here, and this is what we doing type of thing. That movement versus generally a lot of immigrants, especially after 9/11, they have that sense of Islam, especially being here, is very quiet.
It's assimilation.
Yes, it's assimilation. They'll quiet down their Islam, they'll quiet it down for American culture and try, like you said, to assimilate more, still be Muslim, but try to assimilate that into the American culture. And it's like, I think for us, we, like you said, it's muddled. We fit somewhere in the middle, in between. We've kind of adopted some of that immigrant way of dealing with Islam. And we don't really know where to kind of stop the Arab part of Islam, where the Black part of Islam or American part of Islam begins, if that makes sense.
You're a firearm expert. You deal with guns.
Yeah.
You teach safety. What's your take on all of the gun violence in and around the area?
I mean, it sucks, obviously. As an instructor, obviously, I teach people how to be better at shooting. So a lot of times I get it online, I get it in person. People attack me and being like, you are pushing the problem because you're teaching kids how to shoot. You're teaching people how to shoot and how to be dangerous out here, how to be liabilities to the community instead of being assets. I used to take it personally. Mm-hmm. Now I just recognize it's just another aspect of ignorance. The more that you understand about something, unless you are like a sociopath and you really want to go out and hurt people, outside of that, the data shows that it goes the opposite way. Mm-hmm. So we have, for example, more negligent discharges, like kids or people accidentally shooting themselves or shooting their guns just by accident, happens in less educated people than it does in education. Right. Educated people when it comes to firearms.
Right.
When you have gun clubs in schools like we used to, you have less accidental shootings among kids. You have less incidents of children playing around with firearms. They know what it is. You have less accidents just in general. You have less incidences of children dealing negatively with firearms, and adults as well. The data shows the same exact thing. So when I look at it, I say, especially when I'm teaching a kids class, I'm killing that curiosity in this kid now so that when in 2 years, when his cousin come over and be like, yo, you want to see something cool? And he popped that gun out of his bag, he know I'm not messing with that, rather than like, yeah, let's go outside and shoot it. Kids nowadays, they're playing more violent games, they're watching more violent movies, and they watch these music videos and stuff like that. They see the guns, like they know it's there, but if they never really dealt with it, the only thing in their mind is on Fortnite, I'm gonna just respawn. I'm gonna just respawn. Like that's just kind of what I just pull the trigger and it goes exactly where I want it. Like, so it's no real thought put to it. Now, when you bring that educational aspect in and you put a kid behind a gun, yo, a gun is cold and heavy. This is a real thing. I'm having a hard time lifting it up. Oh, it's loud. Oh, I feel the power behind this thing. I'm not picking that thing up.
So, like, what's the solution? If you could write a solution or implement a solution, what's the solution to gun violence?
I think, and it's going to sound, I'm definitely going to contradict myself. I think there is a solution and there isn't. The reason I think there isn't a solution is because I think that it is just an aspect of human nature in our time. Mm-hmm. Humans have always done this. Whether it was a knife, whether it was a bow and arrow, whether it was a spear, bad people have always gone out and done bad things to other people. Right. So that, I don't think that's going to change.
Right.
The way that it's being done is just through guns because of the fact that, again, it's the height of our technology, it's what we have accessible.
Right.
I don't think a solution is getting rid of the guns.
That's what a opponent would say.
Right. To get rid of guns or
make them not accessible.
Laws.
But you're never going to get rid of all of them.
I mean,
even not even getting rid of all of them, but just make
it less accessible.
Make them less accessible.
I got a better idea. Why don't we make murder less accessible? We've done it already. We've written 1 million laws. We place it. We teach our kids from like, don't murder. Don't do drugs. Like we like, think about all the crimes that are crimes in this. We say don't do these things. We made these things illegal.
Right.
If, for example, you go over to Kensington, right? We see what that's like over there. Is it because it's so accessible? Like, is that the reason that place looks like that? It's because you can just go to 7-Eleven and buy drugs? I mean, yes and no. Because it's there, like the drug dealer's going to be out there, but he ain't out there like state sponsored. I use the Christchurch shooting as a perfect example in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. The one in New Zealand a couple of years ago. What a lot of people don't know about that incident, he killed 54 Muslims, people that day. Mm-hmm. But he went to 2 different masjids. Mm-hmm. The first masjid he went to, he killed 48 people. The majority of the people he killed was in one spot. Mm-hmm. He went to the second spot. When he got there, he started shooting. There was an armed police officer in that second masjid who shot back, and that's what stopped the shooting. Mm-hmm. That shooting, though, gave the understanding of what it should be, how we should deal with guns. If we deal with them in an educated, armed, protective sense, and that's the agenda that we push behind guns, that's the message, that would happen more. A lot of these mass shooters, when them jokers write them crazy manifestos, a lot of times, again, certain things that are not put out on MSNBC and the news and stuff like that, but if you go online and you read them, a lot of times they say, I picked this spot because there's not going to be anybody shooting back at me. That's why they go to the schools. That's why they go to concerts, hospitals. They don't have mass shootings at police stations. They don't have mass shootings in these places where there are armed, trained people.
I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Generally, people go to places where there's no pushback. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not doing no crimes near the cops, around the cops, or anything.
But that's the point.
Whether it's stealing,
but why?
Not because they're armed, because the police represent an authority.
But this is what I'm saying. But that's about to be my point. Is if you build an authority with that, if you build an authority of protection, if you build an authority of you can't come here and do whatever you want, people are not going to come there and do whatever they want. For example, like what happened at Philadelphia Masjid at the E. There was cops that was near. There's security there and things along that line. But part of the reason that happened there is because they could come there and do that. If you have a reputation, if you come over to this masjid, you're going to get dealt with. Less bulls is going to come and do that. All right, when you actually have that point of, like, you can actually do it. Not just old heads that say I'm on security and we going to deal with it. Not like that. But that's the point about police stations. They represent an authority. That's the same way like bulls will do whatever they want in the city, but when they go into the county, they're going to click that seatbelt and turn that music down. Because again, I know I can't do whatever I want here.
I will say it's a deterrent.
Yes, it's a deterrent. Because I don't think you can erase it completely. I've been to masajid that had weak security, and I've been there to other masajid that had strong security. I've worked at both of these places from time to time too. And I can watch the different interactions. I see what's able to go on and what's not able to go on. And eventually people get the gist of what they can do and what they can't. Right. And a lot of times, again, you're talking about dealing with people that cooperate with you. They had a big security meeting at Masjid, Philadelphia Masjid last week. A foundation that I'm working with, that my company is working with, was doing a presentation there. So I was there in support. I spoke about this too. I said, we need to be more put together. And I spoke specifically about one of the signs that they have at the front of the Masjid that says no guns allowed. And I said, okay, that's great. We have a sign out there, but are we really ready to enforce that on the other side of that door? No. And my opinion is no. And a brother that was working on security that was there at that meeting, he got upset. He was like, well, we just put up metal detectors. And he was like, the last Jumu'ah that they had the day before, he said, I stopped 4 guns from coming in the Masjid. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But those are people that were cooperating with you. If somebody wanted to come in here and hurt us, they're not going to see the sign and they're not going to turn over their gun or go somewhere else. They're going to do what they want to do. So I think it's more to a point. It's not an easy thing and it's going to take time, but like it's also a negative thing because some bulls is going to have to get hurt. Bulls going to have to get put down eventually before people start recognizing, oh snap, I can't, they killed such and such. He went in there and wild and they taught or they did what, like that stuff is going to have to happen. And that's not positive. Like that's, in the long run, it's positive, but it's not nice, right? When we think about it. So it's like when that stuff starts happening, people are eventually going to start recognizing where they can do stuff and where they can't. And they'll go do it somewhere else to somebody else that they could do it to. Right. But it might not be here. Right. And I think that's my goal, or at least my personal intention on what I do, the mission, the vision I push behind Blackwell Training Group is to do that. We need to build more educated, more responsible gun owners. I don't care what color your skin is. Like, you more educated, you more responsible, you're better at protecting your family. And I go to the extreme situation. It's a joke that goes around. If some boy broke into an apartment complex and he's going through the doors and he's looking to figure out which house or apartment he's going to break into, you got one house that has a sign that says no guns are in this house. And then the other door has a picture of a target on it with a bunch of holes in the head. Like, even though that's extreme, that's a joke. Right, it's a joke and it's extreme. But it's like, that's the
two-way guys, man. Nah, I'm about to yeah. So normally, man, we end with a couple questions to kind of lighten it up, okay, or whatever, man. So we got a little spin on it because you're from Chester. So some of the Philly questions. Here we go. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. Yeah. So all right. So the first question is, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Ooh, I wanted to be a firefighter. What? They had a joint in Chester one day where they had like a bunch of fire trucks. They came to like a parking lot, and the kids were supposed to come. They had like games and stuff. They were showing the kids, letting the kids on the truck and stuff. And I was me and my brother and sister, we were on this particular truck. And they got a call to go to a fire. Oh, wow. And they was getting the kids off, and you saw them scooting up, and they was rushing, hitting the stuff. I was like, Mom, I want to do that. I was like, yo, call me. I gotta go.
That
like,
adrenaline hit you, huh?
Bro, I saw it, and I was like, that's me. That's, firefighter.
It'd be like that. What's the worst job you ever had, though?
The worst job. The worst job I ever had, I worked for an armored truck company, Dunbar. I did that. My very first day, I put in my 2 weeks.
What made it the worst job? Like,
I was training security at the time, so I thought like, oh, this is a security-oriented type job, and it wasn't. They was hiring anybody. The pay was crazy. They didn't give me they was like, you got to wait 9-10 months before you can get a gun on a truck. And I'm driving around with, bro, I'm talking about, like, I saw what they put in the back of that truck. Yeah. It was no way I was getting on that truck with the caliber of people I was working with. Bulls was posting, going to Chipotle for lunch today. Like, Joker, you telling them where we going to be at 12 o'clock. Like, you.
Go to Chipotle.
Bro, like.
Got this $4 million in the
right,
back.
In the
I'll be in the drive-thru.
I'm going to be in the drive-thru. Like,
you took a selfie with it. Like,
literally, that's the type of people I was working with. And I saw, like, the way that things was going. I was like, nope. And the hours was long. I was just driving for 10, 12 hours every single day. And I couldn't get out the seat. It was like a box. I'm sitting right here for 12 hours
His
a
partner
day.
was saying duffel bag boy.
Listen, it was crazy. Yeah, nah, that was definitely the worst job I had.
What are you most proud about, either from yourself or somebody else, coming from Chester?
Okay.
I think I'm probably the most proud of the potential that Chester has of Islam in the city. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, to come from a place like that, right. I feel like that's something to work towards and to be happy about. And just, I see the city changing. I see the Islam is changing in Chester right now. And it's very, very positive. And I love to see the growth. I think I'm probably most proud about that. I got to say family too, because I got a lot of family athletes that came out of Chester. I had an aunt that was in the Olympics twice, track and field. My grandfather opened up one of the first martial arts schools.
Wow.
Stuff like that. But yeah,
Legacy.
just
Legacy.
Yeah, legacy. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, just the potential where Chester's going to go with his son, inshallah. That's what I feel like is the most proud.
I love it. And being from Chester, being from where you're proud of your city, proud of your family.
Yeah.
How can people support, and where can people go to support, your movement and what you do?
Blackwell Training Group.
Blackwell Training Group on
Blackwell Training Group, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook page. Just go there. I tell people all the time, like, if you got the patience, you can go through our page. We put out a lot of information. So like you can learn a lot just from our pages and the stuff that we post to people that we support, people that we say to go to and train with. That's probably the best way to do it for now. Right now, we're looking to start an initiative, hopefully this school year, inshallah, coming. We're branching into active shooter training for schools.
Dope.
And trying to get...
And we could support that through...
Yeah, you can definitely support that through the website, through the socials and stuff like that.
Man, we really... Like, we appreciate you coming, man. We learned a lot, man.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a dope story, man, because I didn't know all of the stuff about you and definitely embody what we trying to elevate, like Black Muslims, man.
I love it.
Culture, faith, excellence, third-party podcast, Gabriel Blackwell, co-host Muslim Casey, I'm Rod DeVoe.
Episode 3.
Episode 3.